All right, we're going to take a look at a few of the problems off of your MT3 LTC7 assignment. They won't be exactly the same, but they'll be very similar to what you're seeing. The first one, if we take a look here, I want to graph g of x equals 5, except when x is 0. So what happens is I'm going to be up at 5, except when x is at 0. So I'm going to put a hole in my graph right here. But other than that point, everything's going to be at 5. So we have a horizontal line going through that. So we'll put a hole at 5. When you're at 0, notice the function is defined to be -1. So when I'm at 0, I'm going to put a closed circle at -1. And that's what our graph looks like. That'd be a non-continuous function because it jumps, doesn't it, to that point. Let's take a look at evaluating step functions. Here's what you do. We're going to find three answers here. We have -5, -2, and -1. Remember, what's in the parentheses is your x value. So you look at your x value, say, hey, where does -5 fit here? Well, -5 is less than or equal to -2, isn't it? So I'm going to use this rule for -5. So in other words, g of -5 is going to be -1/2 times -5 plus 2. Now we're just going to simplify that. A negative times a negative is a positive, so we get 5/2 plus 2. We need a common denominator to add them. So I already have 5. It's actually 2/1, so we have to multiply by 2 to the numerator and denominator. So I get 5 plus 4/2, which is 9/2. Now let's take a look at g of -2. Where does -2 occur? Oh, -2 is the same rule, isn't it? Because it's less than or equal to -2, so I'm going to use this rule again for g of -2. So g of -2 is -1/2 times -2 plus 2. So a negative times a negative is a positive, so I get +1 plus 2, which equals 3. Notice I use this rule because it equals -2. If it would have been slightly bigger than -2, I would have used the second rule. Then finally, let's find -1. Well, -1 is not less than or equal to -2, is it? -1 is between -2 and +1, so I'm going to use my second rule now. So to find g of -1, it'll be -1 minus 1 squared minus 2. Well, -1 minus 1 is -2. -2 squared is 4 minus 2. So I get 2 for that rule. So g of -1 would have been 2 on that one. And that's what you use to evaluate in those functions. Here's another type of function we're going to look at. It's got two rules. Okay. So the first one is if x is less than -1. So what I'm going to do is I want to make a table. X and y. I'm going to go -1. I'm going to pick a number smaller than -1, like -2. Now notice there's no line under the -1 here, is there? So when I graph this, this will be an open circle. So now let's do -1. -3 times -1 is +3, minus 1 is 2. So I'm at -1. I don't know why I put a negative there. It's +2. So at -1, I'm going to be up at 2, and I'm going to have an open circle there. Now let's do -2. -3 times -2 is +6, minus 1 would be 5. So at -2, I'm going to be up at 5. Now this will be a closed circle because it's in that range there. And I know this is a line. I know my line goes to the left. So I'm going to draw a line going through those 2 points. Now, I'm going to use my second rule. And I want to pick numbers that are greater than or equal to -1. So I'll go like -1 and 0. Now notice on this one, there is a line under it. So both my points are going to have closed circles. So I put a -1 in for x. So the opposite of -1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Notice they're at the same point, aren't they? So I'm just going to fill this graph in. So -1 and 2. And I'll put in 0. Well, the opposite of 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. So I'll graph 0 and 1. And then I'll draw a line, or a ray in this case, going through those 2 points. Is it continuous? Could I have drawn this line without lifting up my pencil, or this graph without lifting up my pencil? Sure, I could. So that would be a yes. I'm going to redo that one because it looks like I've selected both of them there. There we go. Let's do one more. Now, g of x equals -x. Well, that's g of x is actually -x plus 0. My y-intercept is 0. And then my slope is -1, so I go down 1 to the right 1. But when I get to 2, it's not defined. So if I go down 1 more and to the right 1 more, I'm going to have an open circle right here because it's not going to include the point 2, but it's going to include every other point on this line. So I'm going to have a line going through that point and then keep on drawing it. That's supposed to be the same line. I didn't draw it very well though, did I? Let me redraw that. There we go. And then when you're at 2, we should be at +2. So at 2, I'm going to put a point. If it's just a value here, it's a point. If it would be like a inequality, like the first one, then it'll be a line or a ray. And that's all you would have to do in that question. Hopefully that will give you enough to get you started on the assignment and hopefully get the assignment finished.